Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. In today's Deal Deep Delve, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but I'm kind of a nerd. This is a D&D map on the wall behind me. So I'm changing Deep Dive to Deep Delve because we're going to do a deep delve into one of your deals. I have Ernie Graffiata, who is going to take some of his time and explain to us how his deal is working out for him. So if you could, Ernie, just take some time here and tell us a little bit about yourself. What does your current portfolio look like, and are you working full-time?
Dion, thank you for having me on your show. I am working full time. I work for the phone company. I've been there 20 years doing tech support, which is basically a call center type job. And my current portfolio is I've got one single family home in Utah that I've had a tenant there for 9 years. So my primary residence is in Utah as well, both just outside of Salt Lake City. I also have a multi dwelling property in Stillwater, Oklahoma,
So kind of
which is
spread out over several different states.
yes, it is. I may call myself the RV real estate investor because a lot of my deals, in fact, I really haven't, all my recent deals have been out of state and they've been through my travels in the RVs, kind of giving me the ability to work outside of my market comfortably and just kind of set up my little office in here and stay wherever I need to stay to get to make sure that things get done.
I know quite a few people who talk about getting to the point in life where they're financially free so that they can retire and get in an RV and go all over the country. But you're using that as a part of the strategy to reach financial freedom. And we were talking a little bit before about this. You literally said this could be a deal that makes you financially free, even without the other ones. So before we get into talking about the property that you said earlier when we were talking, that could possibly be the one property that actually makes you financially independent. You said that there was another property that led to this. How did that first property work out?
I had one rental property in Utah that I bought in 2007, and that was being a speculative investor before the last market crash. That property, I got caught unexpectedly by the crash, and I tried to sell it right in the summer of 2007, and the market was not having it. I became a landlord by default, and at the time, it was a little scary. It was really a blessing in disguise. So I went through a few tenants at first, and it was negative cash flow at first, and then as I refinanced it back in like 2012, and I got me a tenant that has actually been there since 2011. So he's been there 10 years now, I guess. I loved that property, but I was under the mental block that, well, once you have two, the banks don't want to give you more. And I never really looked into it. And then when I started running into some real estate videos on YouTube in the summer of 2019, I was seeing that other people were actually doing it. And there is a strategy to get to accomplish it. When I passed that threshold, I went crazy on watching YouTube videos. While that was happening, I was spending a lot of time in my motorhome, actually from like 2015 till 2020. I spent a lot of time in my motorhome visiting a city that I really love, which is Portland, Oregon. So while I was in Portland, enjoying some of the nightlife out there, I was in my downtime, I was listening to real estate stuff, ended up putting out some bandit signs in that area, which is interesting because I don't even have a house there. And that led to a deal that I put under contract on December 31st of 2019, the very last day of the year.
It's funny how you said you had the mental trap of thinking once you have a couple of mortgages, you're just done. There are actually investors who think that way still. My brother has retired with 10 paid off properties. He paid off his primary house, took out a home equity line of credit, used that to buy the next property, paid it off, used that home equity line of credit to buy the next one, and he rinsed and repeated till he had 10. Recently, like literally a couple of days ago, he asked me, how are you getting so many mortgages? I thought once you had a couple, the banks wouldn't lend you anymore. And I had to take the time to sit back and have a Dion talk with my brother and explain how, as your rental income is on your tax returns, it can grow so that your debt to income basically stays the same if you're buying your properties right.
That's a very good point with your brother, and that's a super valid concern. I mean, I lost a lot of money by having that mindset over the years. If I could have found out about this earlier, I no doubt I could have been done and retired by now. Nonetheless, back to the Portland property, that I got really lucky, and it had a really good profit margin, and it didn't really require a lot of work. My whole strategy in doing this is that I want to retire early from my W-2 to something that gives me more freedom with my time, because the one thing that you have in your life that is most valuable, I think, is your time. I remember while I was flipping that property, and mind you, I am also taking my W-2 job everywhere I go. I just like I have internet as I'm sitting in my motorhome right now speaking with you. I'm working my W-2 job in my motorhome. I worked it in Portland from the house that I flipped. Technically, like Mindy from BiggerPockets does, she does the live and flips. I didn't even realize it until now, but I was technically doing a live and flip over there for 3 months until I sold it. And I was looking at different, what can I do? What can I segue into from this property once I got it sold that could perhaps replace a $60,000 a year income. And I was looking at properties in Detroit, Michigan, because those look favorable, where if I had 6 of those or 7 or 8 of those homes that you could buy for maybe $40,000, $50,000 each, and they would cash flow $700 to $800 each, that perhaps I could have enough of those. But there was a big problem. I just couldn't get enough of them. The property in Oregon wasn't going to make me that much enough money to buy enough of those to where I could retire. And I remember seeing this one property that I saw on Zillow in Stillwater, Oklahoma, that had been on there for about 8 months, 8 or 9 months, maybe longer. And it just wasn't getting any traction. No, it wasn't getting any eyes on it. No one had the property saved, and I think it had about 30 views. And I think it was some nuance where it may have been listed under an apartment, but it was actually a commercial property because it was 6 doors. Anything 5 doors or more is considered commercial.
When was this when you saw the property? 2018, 2019, 2015?
I first saw it February of 2020 after looking at properties in Detroit, and I'm just thinking I could definitely buy like 2 of them, but that's just not going to cut it. And I'm trying to do what people do in 5 years. I'm trying to do it inside of like a year. I mean, if I would have started in 2015, I would have been fine by now. But so I'm trying to like fast forward. So I really want a property that can bring that cash flow in. I just, as I mentioned, I couldn't find enough of them in Detroit I don't have enough money to buy that many houses unless I burr, but burring takes time. So, but I wanted to do it quickly. So I revisited the property in Oklahoma because that was, at the time, it had 6 tenants. It had cash flow of $4,350 before expenses. That's what all the rent roll added up to be after I purchased it, and I only paid 260. Well, it was listed for $275,000, and I paid $267,500. That's what I was able to get it under contract for in June, and then I went up there in July and bought it. And so the mortgage on it is just under 2,000.
So that timeline is very important for people listening. In February of 2020, people heard of the virus. The world hadn't been shut down yet, so it makes sense to be looking for a property. But in March and April, the world was turned off. The stock market had gone down 30%. People were afraid everywhere. And in June, when most of the country was in full panic mode, you were making the offer to get the property under contract, still moving forward. And that to me is important because I took some time off because prices started to go up and I didn't understand why. Early on last year in 2020, I didn't realize how much interest rates had dropped. I wasn't paying attention to that. Luckily, Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time kind of pointed it out in one of his videos, and I thought, I should actually run the math on something. And I realized that even though prices were going up on the properties I was looking at, the payments would be less. So I think it's kind of impressive that in June of 2020, when a lot of people were standing back and saying, prices are going up, I can't buy properties, I'll have to wait for the crash, you were buying this one. So now it's June, you've got the property under contract. Tell me about the property.
The scary part wasn't so much in June. The property I put under contract on December 31st of 2019, it was an elderly couple that needed time to sit because they had been in their property for about 22 years. And so it took them months to liquidate things before they were actually moved out. I thought we were going to close it in January and then February and then March. And the property in Oregon, the flip that I bought, wasn't closed until April the 6th. 3 weeks after COVID was announced, and everybody in my family, my dad, my mom, and some friends said, put the brakes on, do not buy this property. And I thought to myself, if I don't do this, I've missed out on so many opportunities so far. I'm not going to let this go. I'm just going to go. I'm just going to get this thing done, and I'm going to buy it. On April the 6th, I remember when it was right in the middle of the lockdown. When everybody was locked down, I was painting. I was cleaning. I was essentially isolated, but I was in there working on that property. The second one in Oklahoma, to go back to your question, wasn't as scary. And what's interesting about this, I mean, the numbers on it look so good. I mean, I can understand and I can relate, and I've been there before, having stomach butterflies at the closing table. When you're signing something, it's like, okay, I'm taking on all this debt, I'm taking on all this responsibility. I remember clearly that when I went out to Oklahoma, and it was the middle of July, I sold the Oregon property on June 30th. When I went out to Oklahoma around the middle of July, and I remember being at the closing table with my lender sitting across the table from me. The lender was actually the president of the bank. This is one of the really cool things when you're dealing with these banks that don't, not the big guys like Chase, but when you have these smaller banks that have just one branch, and that's what this was. This is a bank that had one branch. The loan officer was also the president of the bank, and it was so pleasurable to work with him. It was so personable, and I didn't have to go through a lot of red tape that you'd think that you would have to go through for a commercial loan. It was one of the easiest loans I've ever done. I was signing papers with confidence just as fast as they could put them in front of me. I felt good about that deal. I just kind of knew it. I knew it inside that this deal could get me out of my W-2 job that I've been at for 20 years. I mean, I just couldn't sign those papers fast enough.
Okay, and you said there's 6 units on this property. What do those units look like? This
property is I will say a bit unconventional, but the numbers made sense. This is a portfolio that a mom and pop and local investor had for many years. And I think it started out as 2 acres with 1 or 2 homes on it, which one of them was a mobile home, 2 stick-built homes onto the property that used to belong to the Oklahoma State University. They brought on a double-wide mobile home, which they put next to those 2 stick-builts. They actually had a travel trailer, which is not the kind that is meant to live in, but the kind that you take to go vacation in. It doesn't have laundry facilities. It's just a bumper pole, 29-foot travel trailer, and that was rented for $500 a month. They had a tenant in that, and then another single wide mobile home, and then the last unit was kind of interesting. It's actually a 2,000 square foot shop, but the shop inside of it has a 2-story apartment inside the shop.
The really cool thing with a property like this is, you said it earlier, it sat on the market for a while and it didn't have a lot of traction. I know investors that when I bring up things like mobile homes, a shop that's been converted into an apartment, they'll say things like, that's not going to appreciate very well. And selling it is going to be difficult because it's like you said, unconventional. My brother owns 10 properties. The majority of them are mobile homes, and he does not care about appreciation in any way whatsoever. And he doesn't care about resale. He's been for 6 years now never having to work again in his life because he was willing to buy an asset that produces cash flow. So looking at a property like this, you saw that, yeah, it might not appreciate as much as stick-built houses across the board that all look like, the perfect little house with the white picket fence, but they're rented out because, and another thing is most people think, well, I wouldn't want to live in a trailer, but you don't live in the trailer. Tenants live there. Tenants live in this apartment that is a converted shop. So tell me what the numbers look like. How much is the mortgage and any expenses that you have?
The mortgage is $1,981. Of the 6 tenants that I had, I lost 2 of the tenants. The shop and the apartment, I actually want to rent as a whole package to someone that can use the shop as well, because it's worth a lot more. That one was only rented for $500 a month. That's worth at least double that. The property's bringing in $3,450 in rent, and I have a mortgage of $1,981. With 3 vacancies, the property is actually making about $1,000 a month cash flow positive. The property was 6 units when I bought it, but it's actually 7 now. I found a 3-bedroom, 2-bath mobile home on Facebook Marketplace right here locally in Stillwater. The property was listed at $275,000. I was able to put it under contract, so I got it for $267,500. The bank was requiring me 20% down, which ended up being a little bit over $50,000, about $51,000 and some change.
With 3 empty units, you have a 34% cash on cash return. That's not terrible.
It's not bad.
No. And then once you have those other units rented out, it just keeps going up from there. Brings me back to where people say, I don't want to buy mobiles because they don't appreciate, and reselling them is difficult. Not too many places do you get a 34% return on your money that you can add value to by buying this other unit that you're adding to the property?
I actually bought two mobile homes. My criteria for having a rental is that it must have laundry, and and it goes without saying it should not have holding tanks, which holding tanks are what RVs and travel trailers have. But if you have something that is permanently lived in, it doesn't really need to have holding tanks because you're just connected directly to a septic system. So I actually bought like a one bedroom FEMA trailer, a 2017, and I removed the travel trailer from that spot. And the FEMA trailer cost me $21,000. But it's a 2017, and the nice thing about that one is that it's actually brand new, never used. It's 4 years old, but no one had ever lived in it, so it still has all the appliances and everything in it. No one, it's never been occupied, so that one won't require a whole lot of rehab. Just hooking it up to the utilities, getting it skirted. I've already got it blocked.
I agree
And
with
so
you on wanting laundry in each unit. I have talked with some investors who say, I want to buy a triplex or a fourplex that has a coin operated laundry because then I'll have a, third or fourth or fifth source of income, not thinking about the cost of tenant turnover. And that almost always when tenants are in a place that doesn't have in-unit laundry, they are waiting for a place to open that does. I have the same criteria on all my rentals that they have laundry hookups. And a quick tip is I don't provide laundry machines. I don't know washer and dryer. The tenants do. If I run into a tenant that I want in the property who doesn't have a washer and dryer, I have machines that previous tenants left behind that they are welcome to use, but I don't maintain, I don't replace when they break. So the tenants can use them at least until they break. Having laundry in the unit is to me really important. And in a little over 10 years now, I'm having my second tenant turnover right now. So that's how important it is to me to limit tenant turnover. Have you thought about using the binder strategy to see what you can get their rents to?
remind me, I believe that is where the tenants will ask you to raise their rent to stay. I have not employed that strategy yet. I am being very careful because with not raising the rents until I'm at full capacity. I'm at four tenants and I'm cash flowing $1,000 positive. The rehabs, so basically, I've got three rehabs that are going on right now simultaneously. Basically, almost all my W 2 income plus all the money that this property is making is being funneled straight into these rehabs to get them done as quickly as possible. I think down the road, I'm going to do that. And
That's a
also,
good way of looking at it. Funneling all of the income from your W-2 and the cash flow that's coming from the property into the property is definitely the right thing to do. That's what I did for the first probably 5 to 7 years of investing. I made sure that every penny that was coming in was being reinvested. Don't let life creep kick in, and don't, try to add things to your life until you have the momentum to where when you do that, you don't even notice it with your cash flow. And I maybe haven't cleared this up too much, and I probably will in a follow-up video to the binder, but when I acquire a property, like buy a duplex, which I'm doing right now, I don't go in the next month or the month after that, the first 2 months, and say, here's my binder. This is what the rents are around you. This is what I paid for the property. What do you think would be a fair rent? Because this is my time to figure out if those are tenants I want to keep. It's going to take you several months to figure out who pays on time, who can fix small things or calls you for every little problem, and who you want to renew with and who you don't. For me, it's always at least 2 or 3 months down the road when I use the binder.
that's a great point. And there's also something else that I learned specifically from you, Dion, that has definitely helped me, and I've already implemented it. I love the video where you talked about where you will take all of the different methods of payment to make it as easy as possible for them to pay rent, whether it be PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, ACH. That video was very helpful.
What is the long-term goal? What do you see this property looking like 3 years from now?
Hopefully, in 3 years from now, I expect it to have it at full capacity and smooth things out and to make it a safe and enjoyable place to live.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on here today. I think it takes some thinking outside the box to come up with making a property like this work. And most of us have the idea of, I need to buy a single family, or I need to buy a duplex, or I have to house hack, or whatever box we're stuck in. Because originally my plan was to buy single family houses, but in my area, they don't cash flow. So I had to shift strategies to small multifamily. You've definitely shifted strategies because you looked in a new state and you looked at kind of almost mixed use property with different types of houses on it. And it sounds like it's a great deal. And after talking to you, this sounds like such a good deal. I think I should sell all of my properties, move to Oklahoma, and find a deal right next to yours. But not today.
Yeah, for sure.
So if somebody has a question for you, how would they get a hold of you?
That's a great question. My email is quietlifeproperties@yahoo.com. Great. Well, I thank you for having me on your show today.
No, I appreciate your time. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
We're sorry, but the number that you have dialed is not in service at this time.